Okay, so I am actually very happy to welcome everyone to this live out. For me, it's a new approach, and I'm sure for the people who is in community of Busurmas, it's also a new approach. But for those of you who has been introduced to this approach before, which is clean language approach, please feel free to just join into the conversation, and probably you can also add your experience, you can add your perspective. I hope this can be an interactive session whereby we exchange our knowledge, our experiences, and we build a collective wisdom around that. And again, welcome. My name is Patricia, and I am a coach in Indonesia. I'm based in Indonesia, and in Indonesia, I do more like nature coaching. And when I first got to know clean language approach from Aries, I was like, wow, this is actually amazing. So that's why I invited her to just speak with us and share her knowledge, share experience, so that at least we get a little bit of a taste, or rather probably a little bit of a peek about what clean language is. And if you would like to know more, definitely later on Aries can provide you on how you can reach her, or you can also get some resources about clean language afterwards. So as usual, those of you who are already on the YouTube channel, feel free to just announce your presence so that I can acknowledge your presence, and we can build this sense of being in the same room. Although we're not in a reality, but we can build that sense of being in the same room and have a conversation. I really love having conversation. So again, feel free to just announce your presence so I can acknowledge your presence here with me, and also later on with Aries. So let me see who are here, and if my signals for some reason lagging, I apologize for that. Hopefully you can bear with it and smooth at this point of time. But again, I hope we can still have this conversation as smooth as possible. Okay, so again, for those of you who are already here, feel free to just announce your presence so that I can acknowledge your presence. It's always good to have to know who am I conversing with for this particular moment in time. And today we have a very interesting topic. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a topic on clean language approach in coaching. I know in our community, we have a lot of coaches, counselors, and people who are interested in personal growth. And I'm sure that when you know about this clean language, I'm sure whether you're a coach, you're a counselor, you are just someone who interested in personal growth, you will benefit from it, because there's a lot of things that you can apply within your own context, because I think you can adopt and adapt in your own context. I'm so excited to just introduce this topic and have a conversation around that. Okay, so we have a very, very, I would say probably I can call her a friend. We've met quite a few times online. I've never met her in person, but I've met her quite a few times online. And she's really the person who introduced clean language to me. And her name is Aries Yo. So let me read her bio to you, or I call her so that you know a little bit about Aries before she comes on the screen with me. So Aries is a seasoned financial professional with over 20 years of experience in wealth management and investment banking. She's also a passionate advocate for gender diversity, having served on the executive committee of the Financial Women's Association of Singapore for over 7 years, holding numerous senior positions, including membership and mentoring chairs, where she brings the organization to new heights. After experiencing a personal tragedy where she lost her son in 2017, Aries pivoted her career and is now an ICF accredited performance coach based in northwest of UK, with additional certification in NLP, positive intelligence, mostly known as PQ, and also clean language facilitation, the one that we're going to expand here in the conversation. So she also specializes in partnering with women leaders to help them to rediscover their authentic selves so as to lead with clear intent and courage. So with that, let us welcome Arius into our conversation. Hi Arius, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you for having me here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. And again, I think my visual is still a little bit lagging, but I hope the people on YouTube and you doesn't find that too disturbing. We can still hold this conversation. Okay, so for those of you who are already on YouTube, if you have any questions while we're having this conversation, feel free to just jot down your questions in the comment box. I'll be checking the comment box every now and then so that we can respond to your question. Or if you have anything that you want to add as a comment because you have experienced it before, you know a little bit about that or a lot about that, feel free to just also add into the comment box. Would love to build just a collective wisdom into this conversation. Okay, so let's start with clean language. So for those of you who were like me, like a newbie in this area, so let's unpack this a little bit. So Arius, what would you explain as clean language to us who are like newbie in this area or in this field?
I'm really wondering where to start. Clean language, as I think I like to say, as his word indicate, clean. So that means that it's not contaminated. That means the facilitator, or you call the coach, or the counselor, therapy, whatever you want to call it, the words is not contaminated with their own biasness or assumption. Because if I may say, humanly, all of us, no matter what is our training or knowledge, we cannot not be biased. We cannot not have assumption, because this is part of human intelligence. We all will have it, right? So what it do, in a very simple way, is clean language. Whatever you say is always using the client words, and then when you ask the questions, your questions will not hold assumptions or biasness. That is what is unique about it. Okay. Of course, in clean itself, the conversation is a little bit more unique. Is the content is generally quite metaphoric. It can be conceptual or sensory, but they all kind of come together because metaphor. I think if you come from that clean coaching space, you're saying in the nature coaching space, you kind of use a lot of metaphor, and you know that when we use metaphor, somehow it speaks very deeply to us in a very personal way. A lot of things we may find very difficult to express or describe, but when we talk about metaphor, you can't, I got what you're saying, I don't have to explain anymore. Or when we use metaphor, we become creative, or we somehow have the ability that we don't have to tap into whatever situation that we are. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that, and we'll come to that in a moment. So that's very briefly what is clean. I'm not the only, but there's quite a big clean community, and it's been around for a while. It's been around for about 50 years. So the person who...
Wow.
No, sorry, 20 years? Sorry, 20 years. I was thinking about NLP as 50 years. 20 years. So you might have heard of this name called David Grove. He's a New Zealander. So clean come from the east, not the west. So he's no longer alive. So he's actually a counselor, psychotherapy. That was his background. And he found that a lot of people, when clients come to them, go with trauma or whatever, they will say, well, I'm stuck in a situation, they cannot get out. And then coach is saying, okay, you are stuck, and what do you want to do? What do you want to get out? They kind of assume that they don't want to be stuck. And then that's where so-called he developed this thing called clean language. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I would say, it's not really it's kind of approach, but it's more of principle. You know, like when we learn, we are all in ICF accredited coach, right? So ICF you must only learn this method or this method, or use growth or use NLP or whatever. But what they do is they say these are the core competency. Now it's 8 core competencies, right? So based on the core competency, you have to take note of how you evoke awareness, what is your coaching agreement and things like that. So clean is a lot more, I see, as a principle than just the approach. Because from clean, there has been a lot of development. There's the symbolic modeling is what I kind of do with one-to-one coaching. So that is developed by James Laurie and Penny Tompkins. So there was a couple of books. Oh, they wrote a book, a very good book, but that's more therapy based. So metaphor in mind. Then there was a lot of other books being written on clean. What I'm trying to say is from that first clean development, then there was a lot of that taking up further into one-to-one as well as group, and even use it for unbiasedness of extracting information. So they call it clean interviewing, for example.
Wow.
For example, yes. So I don't know, don't know how many years ago, this is quite a few years ago, somebody actually had to go into the police, this is actual case, teaching the police how to ask questions to the children so they will not form bias and things like that to get the information in that right way, right? So it's called clean interviewing. So that you can use it in multiple ways. So there's been multiple kind of development from it. Yeah. I think I see quite a lot.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because from what you say, I'm taking away a few highlights. First of all, that the application of clean language in coaching is actually even not borrowed, probably adapted from the counseling space, because it's actually the first emergence is actually in the counseling and therapy space, then it's developed into the coaching space. And which means that in itself already implies its adaptability in different contexts. And you were mentioning it even being developed further and adapted further into the context of interviewing, which is not in coaching, not in counseling, but it's really more like HR and like getting information. So it sounded to me like there's a lot of potential for this approach to be adapted in different contexts. Because I think what you are highlighting is the principle of being unbiased. That's one. And using metaphors to really help the person express his thoughts probably, or probably also the feelings, and to make that metaphor as a creative way of expression. And that actually brought me to another curiosity. Like I mentioned to you earlier, that I and my community, we do quite a bit of nature coaching. And in nature coaching, we do a lot of unpacking metaphors and analogy that comes from nature. So how do you see, or if you have any experiences about how clean language can work or have worked in a coaching session that has a nature coaching setting?
Like what I see, right? When David Blue developed the clean language, he also developed a lot of processes. So there's this thing called emergent knowledge, clean space, and a lot of other clean work around it. So when you say nature coaching, what brought to mind was clean space. So as the word say indicates space. How do I explain clean space? Actually, I wrote a blog on that. So if I simplify, if I ask you, have you thought of like lay out the content of your mind in front of you, or consider putting thoughts in a different angle, everything, but you just put it out there. So that is your space. So we actually have a space inside us, but you can't put the space out there. I can't relate that to nature coaching, right? Your space is that nature environment. And I understand earlier that we spoke, nature can be outside, where you can also bring a piece of the nature inside by maybe looking out your window. having something with you that you can sense and touch. So when a clean space, you can do indoor or outdoor, but outdoor, of course, is better because you are in the space rather than you're looking at the space. So now I'm looking at you, right? I can saw your background, really nice, very nature. So it kind of bring me to a different stage if I look at it. But what if I'm really in the midst of that green and see lots of lavender? Not only that I see it, I'm in it, I can smell it, the senses is much stronger. So space actually say that when you are in that kind of context, it kind of open up your mind to things that you didn't even expect. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm getting is when we are in the nature context, the possibility of getting in touch with our inner landscape through the richness of the metaphors that being offered by nature is actually being increased. So would that be a correct perception?
Yeah, you can. Because, the thing is, we, as a human, we have a lot of connection with nature. When we're in nature, there's something happen in us, right? Like
Yes.
when we are very stressed, we go to nature, our stress level go down. I think there's some books about it saying that when we are in contact, even you go to a park, green park, it helps. Somehow there's something happening within the mind, the endorphin when you're in the nature space. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, we both come from the ICF background and training and all the 8 core competencies. So, what would you say the main difference between a person who is also a coach who using ICF core competencies but not using clean language principle and coaching with ICF core competency and clean language principles? What would be the difference?
Sorry, you're asking me what's the difference between the ICF core competency versus the clean principle. Is that your question?
Yeah. If someone using the core competencies as a coach, and if someone using the core competency and the clean language approach, what would be the difference in the coaching?
The only difference I would see is clean actually have all the core competency there. So the difference that you will see is really very on the clean conversation will probably have a lot of metaphor. You will start to develop the whole metaphoric landscape rather than, in the core competency doesn't say that, okay, when client says something, you must go into a metaphor and then you develop the metaphor. It doesn't say like that. A team, the reason they want you to go into a metaphor landscape is kind of go into part that is deep inside you, which you don't even think that is feasible. It's kind of, so you will see a lot of time people say, oh God, that's weird, really weird. Oh my God, why is this happening? So you will see the response coming out and you know that something is happening within them. So in the coaching session, the client will just saying they have a shift or whatever, but they will not say it's weird. Yeah, because it's quite weird that you can start talking about things that you have never comprehended about. You can start talking about screw, and then you have a screw on your head, and the screw come together. It's like what and how that happened. It's quite an unusual conversation, and it's very abstract. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's how I felt as well when I experienced that clean language coaching session, whereby I think really the main difference is the use of metaphors, which is much more compared to coaching that does not use clean language principles. I think the metaphor enables me, especially if I recall my experience, enables me to express my thoughts in a much more creative way, if I can say that. Like probably there are things that's very hard to say if using logic, but using metaphors, I can just add, subtract, whatever images that comes to mind, I can just bring it there and then later on just unpack. So with all these images abstract and edit and everything, what does that mean? So I think that adds a lot of richness into the exploration and into the clarity, even I would say.
I think is when we talk about actual situation, or go coaching or therapy, whatever, there's always an issue or challenge, difficulties, whatever that is, right? Or normally they're stuck. We don't use the word stuck, we may use the word stuck, right? But what I found is when they're able to move away from their own situation, talking in the literal sense, and they go into the metaphor, they can start thinking about, they can just talk about that. And then they realize that kind of come back and apply to them what happened to them. That is the so-called magic that is going to happen, which is like, God, how does that work? But it does work. Yeah.
It does. I mean, I'm speaking from experience. Having experienced the clean language, it does work. Yeah, so I'm curious, because at that time, I was doing it with you in an indoor setting and we does not really touch upon nature. And I wonder if you have any experiences whereby clean language is actually being applied or related to nature. And in that particular experience, how would you describe that?
Both from the client and a coach perspective.
Can?
I think that I would think of is more of I would say clean space, right? I have invited some people over to my place and we kind of do the session outdoor in my garden and we kind of move around the space. So clean space is always starting like, the same thing, ask them to, we don't even need, so clean space is even more clean than a normal clean session because we don't even need to know what they want to talk about.
Wow.
Yeah. It's basically really tapping into their own, what I understand they started off is really getting into their creativity. So they can have a problem, they write it out on the paper and they put it somewhere. You can start asking them to check. Is that the right height? Is that the right length? How they see the angle, the perspective, everything correct? Then you start asking them questions and ask them to move around. As you move around, what is that feeling? I mean, they didn't ask you what is that feeling, but I'm just saying that when you move around, what's the change in perspective? It's kind of really going in to see when you change, what happened to that, the thing that you put there, whatever that goal or objective or issue or challenge or problem that you have, and things change. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow,
that's really
online,
wow.
We read about it, right? Some people do it in the car park. They've done it before in person, but if you're doing online, I would say that put a earpiece and then I'll just direct you, but I'll ask some questions. Most important is I hear you, and then you just move around wherever you want to move, and you just asking them questions. It's basically helping them to kind of reflect and go deep and reflect. That's what it does. Yeah. And what is better place to reflect than outdoor, than in the nature?
Yes, totally agree on that. Wow, but that's really blow my mind because like in coaching, we are so used to have a goal, like agreement, contracting. And I think the idea
I won't use clean space for I see core competency, but use it for they call it symbolic modeling, which will be really the core competency. Or the clean language as a whole is really have the competency about evoking awareness about what they want to work about. It's not your agenda; it's always their agenda. Because I can't remember who said that. They're saying that your clean coaching is really like blind serving. That means you serve blindly. Wherever they want to go, you just follow them, which is why the session tend to take a bit longer in a sense. Because you need to turn every stone, everything that they say, you see.
I see. Yeah, I can understand why it is called blind serving. Because I'm imagining that you don't know really the topic that's being talked about, the goal that's being explored.
But in this one, we still know, like for example, in most when we start the session, for clean, they always ask, for coaching, they ask, what would you like to focus today? What's best for you? And things like that, right? So in clean, they ask, what would you like to happen? And then you will say something. So depending on what you say, then we move into the next conversation.
So that's always the first starter. What would you like to have happened? I see.
So you can tell me your goal, tell me your problem. You can tell me, I have this problem, but I don't want this problem. Then what do you do? So if they give you a lot of problems, they still haven't tell you what they want out from it. So you're talking about coaching scenario. Then you will really ask them, okay, you give me all this problem. So what would you like to have happen? And then it's like, oh no. And then until they give you an outcome, then you develop the outcome.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's actually a very, in a way, it's a very open-ended question, but also very, because so what would you like to get by the end of this conversation? It's like very concrete, right? But what would you like to have happen? That's more open, but open in a way that also have somewhere like you want to move towards. Like it's not like blank or random. So it's sort of like a nice balance, I would say, between the openness and also there's some sense of direction, I would say. And that's also quite a simple question to ask.
Yeah, it is a very open question. So which is why the answer you get, we've seen a lot of clients, right? You even ask them, so what do you want to talk about today? And then the client will go, blah, 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 blah. Actually, then you find, that's not what they want to talk about. They actually want to talk about something else, right? So asking a very open question, they you know what they will tell you. You honestly don't know. And then from there, they might tell you something. So, and then you have to start asking them questions. But the thing is, I always say in clean, you really want to get into a metaphor, because when you get into a metaphor, but the thing is, when you're trained, your ear is more in tune to metaphor. Or they even say things conceptual, like preposition, very strong. Sometimes when they use certain words like I'm in the situation. So it's like actually in the situation, they actually imply what kind of in the situation. You might not know what they will tell you. Yeah. You have to be very mindful of the words they use, which is why they say that it's very important to not change the word. This is what is quite different from a normal coaching. You kind of tend to summarize the word, and you reflect, you kind of trying to say this is what I'm hearing and things like that, right? In clean, you don't say this is what I'm hearing. You don't. You really say it from what they say, and this and this and this, just the keyword they say, and then whatever you want to ask them. So you want to kind of make sure that you pick up the right word and ask them on the word. So because we believe that words have power, and I think we talked about that a word of power is really in NLP. But the thing is, when I change the word you use, it may not sit as well as for the person, or I may lead the person to think about that as the word.
I see.
So that's why we very careful when we paraphrase.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine by holding to that principle, then I think one of the strengths for those people using clean language approach is like sharper discernment. Like you say, when hearing certain words that can actually open up to further exploration. And also the use of metaphors that you're talking about in clean language, which I resonate a lot, because like I say, in nature coaching, we use a lot of metaphors. It's just that the nature become the source of the metaphors. And I totally agree that once we go into the metaphorical realm, like so many things can be accessed, things that we are even amazed that it can suddenly open up to that level. But I'm just curious, because in nature coaching, we do have some clients have some resistance to it, like doubts, like, will this work? Will this work? I wonder, in your experience, when you do clean language, do you have any experience of resistance from the client?
To be honest, I won't use it with every client, but in the full session. But you use bite size of it. For example, I'm very mindful of the words they use, and you can do some developing questions. So you know, in clean stuff, they have some intentional questions. Like for example, ask you, what would you like to have happen? What needs to happen? It's actually asking you, what are you trying to do here? Please tell me. You know, but there are some developing questions where it's what kind of whatever you say. Oh, you know, I'm quite unhappy here. And then because I'm unhappy, and so they keep talking about the problem, then they eventually you realize that they keep coming back to the circle. Then you need to probe a bit further. You say, what kind of unhappy? We want them to understand. And when whatever that is, then that's like what you kind of get them to understand what is that. Because people talk about it in a very high level. But when you can get into metaphor, something happened for them. So when you do a developing question, you kind of let them go further into what's happening to them.
Yeah. I recall my experience with you in a clean language session, and I recall it's a very, yes, abstract, a very abstract discussion, and very reflective. And I wonder, in your experience, because in my experience doing nature coaching, I find not everyone actually suitable for that kind of approach. And not everyone is ready as well. So I wonder, in your experience with clean language, do you have similar experience with certain clients?
Okay. So what I do is normally most clients can ask question like, what kind of, is there anything else? It's very easy. When they see something, you ask them, is there anything else? We don't ask what else. What else is actually assuming there's something else going on. So you ask what else. So we don't ask what else. You ask anything. Yeah, okay. Take note. Anything else means there can be something else, there can be nothing else, right? The client have a choice. The client decide. If there's something else, you'll be surprised what else they can tell you. If there's nothing else, they tell you nothing else. But most clients will have something to tell you. But when you ask what else, you're assuming there's more. So what else? So when I first learned coaching using the growth model in the option, they always say, what else? Right? So that's all question coaches ask. But when you use clean, that is a unclean question, unfortunately. Okay. Okay. Going back to what you say, when some clients are resistant, yes, a lot of clients resistant. I ever did a session for a coaching community in Singapore. And then after that, they have breakout session to try some of the questions and things like that, right? And quite typical, even myself when I first started. The hardest question for anyone, for me especially, not just asking for a metaphor, but the where questions. When you're very used to very reflective and very sensing of where you are, not just in your body, but what's happening around you, inside and outside. When I ask where about a where question, you can reflect and tell me. And a lot of people, when you ask them where, they look at you as like, what kind of crazy question are you asking? And then they're like, what? You're like, what? They will say like, what? That means they don't understand your question. So I'm normally very I will normally be very gentle and see what kind of client I'm having. If a client like yourself, you know, they really have a lot of that kind of reflective nature. And I'll tend to ask a bit more and see where they are. And they go into a metaphor, I'll ask them. But some client, when they keep a metaphor, the moment you ask the metaphor, you can see that they run away. They're like, no, I'm just telling you what this is metaphor is. Like, they're trying to explain that stuff. And you know, they're not ready for it because they just basically say, please do not ask me. Basically, this one. Because when you ask them, they're like, no. You're like, what is it going on there when I'm asking you about what you say? Why do you have to jump and defend yourself? I'm not judging you about the metaphor that you give. I'm asking about what is this metaphor? Why you come up with this metaphor? But so you can tell some people are ready and they will go deep and talk about it. Some people are just like, they look at you, what? Huh? Can you ask that again? Okay. So you know you don't want to go there, right? So you're going to break the momentum. So I feel that when clients are not there, you don't want to go there with them. So I mean, to me, I feel coaching is all about your client. Clean language or clean approach is really a very good principle to use. But it's if you think, oh, that is one of the best methodology approach you can ever use, which kind of everything I learned, I felt eventually point out to clean, as in the more you learn. But you cannot just impose on the client. I know it's good. The teacher is good non-assumption. But when you ask the client to go deep into themselves, to sense and to feel for it, a picnic, you can tell they go into a picnic mode. You don't want to go there. And then you really have to step away. Like we say nature, right? So normally I find people probably in nature, they are more wailing, but they're probably not used to go nature. What do you do in the nature? They probably feel a bit weird. But once or twice is fine. But clean is more than that. So you can still ask some clean questions, but some of the questions you have to be more mindful the way you ask. And especially when you know the client talking a lot and you want them to give you a metaphor, you can ask for a metaphor, but don't ask them, give me a metaphor. We don't ask it that way. We kind of develop everything that they do. There's a and then we ask them, when you have this and this and this, after you develop it, they feel a lot about all these things that they are saying. Then you say, that's like what? And then they kind of visualize and feel, and then they can give you a metaphor. But that comes with your tone as well, because you kind of bring them into a very hypnotic state where they can feel from what they say, what is that about? And then you go on further developing, that gets stronger, because when you can have that being developed, they can feel the attachment to that stronger, rather than it's all here very logicalized. Oh, it must be red, it must be blue, it must be green, it must be an apple, whatever. So when you logicalize, you don't feel it.
Yeah. I think I resonate a lot with that, because similarly when we do nature coaching, right, we want the client, usually there's this particular part whereby we invite the client to do some relaxation before they interact with nature, so that when they interact with nature, it's not really coming from the logical mind, but they also activate their so-called intuitive mind when they interact with nature and access deeper, like the metaphor that they get really connect much deeper within themselves rather than just coming from the logic. And that's when they can do that, that's usually our breakthrough moments. Because I think, like you say, metaphors has a way of just go deep beyond logic sometimes. So I wonder if you have like those breakthrough moments like that you recall and sort of like even amazes you in your practice.
To be honest, when you are in a full clean session, you normally as amazed at what kind of things the client will come out with. You know, they can start developing the whole landscape. That's what the difference in a clean compared to normal coaching. You use metaphor, but you never develop the metaphor. You talk about the metaphor, but you talk a little bit about it. You talk about the metaphor. But in a clean, you develop the metaphor into a landscape. Yeah. So I guess.
Yeah. I recall my experience. So for those of you who have never experienced clean language, I think what Aries has just said now is a very key element in clean language, whereby I think in nature coaching we invite the client to interact with something that they resonate with, and we use that as a metaphor and we talk about that. But in clean language, like Aries said, it's not just talking about the metaphor, but it started with developing the metaphor. So, and in my own experience, that development can really blossom into to use the word landscape, and it is true, it can blossom into a landscape. And I think that is something that amazes me about the use of clean language, how much the metaphor can actually expand it, as if it has its own soul, and as it expands, it still connect with our soul within. And that's something that definitely amazes me. And I think that is a very creative way of connecting with our own soul or our own inner landscape that sometimes is hard to be described with words. So I wonder, is that really the benefit of clean language?
There was a conversation that I think it leave a pretty deep impression with me. I spoke to there was this lady, Korean lady. So we have a call that was when I was in Singapore in January. And we just wanted to have a little bit of experience what it's like. So it's supposed to be like 15 minutes. So after like 15 minutes, I said, what do you want? She said, oh, can we continue? Are you okay? So we go from 15 to 30 to 45 to like nearly an hour, kind of 4-hour sessions. And she was having some challenges. I think the mom is staying with her, and then she's single. I don't know how old she is, probably in 40s, 30s, I don't know. So what clean actually does is when you resolve whatever that issue that's holding you back, you also resolve many other issues. The thing is, everything that we face and the way we do it's kind of behavior, it's a pattern that we have. So when you resolve that pattern, the pattern is not at this level, it's really at a very deep level. So when you resolve this pattern, you resolve a lot of other things. So from that sessions, where she talked things very abstract. She talked about gravity, she talked about the sun, she talked about what it's like. So you talk about, it doesn't sound like a coaching, right? She's talking about the whole planet and sustainability and things like that, how that she come into relation in all these things. So but in the end she kind of have a breakthrough, and then she moved out from Korea and moved to US. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't even know that was some of the issue then, but it goes to show that there's things that she wanted to do in her life that she couldn't do. So that was a huge breakthrough for her, and then she able to do things that she never thought of doing, and she actually leave the country and moved to US. I say, wow. And I spoke to her a few months later. I said, what happened to you? And then yeah. So what I'm trying to say, the main thing is it's not about, like we say, you coach a person, not the problem. So that's what coaching do. So in clean itself, we do not know what that deep rooted so-called issues the person face. What is that there, right? We just kind of trust in them, which is called the blind serving. Letting the client lead where they want to go, and you just kind of say, okay, you're saying this, what is this about? You're saying this, what is this about? And then you kind of join them together, all the dots that they say, and then they can see, oh my God, I'm saying this and this. You kind of join them and link them up and present to them that this is the landscape. And when you present the landscape, then they realize that, oh, actually something is happening. And when that is clear, that clear up the thing. I know it's quite abstract to talk about it until you experience yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. For those of you that feels it's like you're still wondering, so how does it really work? Probably I can share a little bit of my own experience with Aries when I experienced that clean language. So she helped me develop this analogy of this ball of light. So it started with a ball of light. And then she asked, oh, where is the ball of light? And then she asked, oh, I cannot recall what like exact question that she asked, but at the end of the conversation, the metaphor that I have is not just a ball of light, but a ball of light that is connected with my heart, and there are people around me connected with the ball of light. So like that single ball of light at the beginning of the conversation has blossomed into like a network, or rather a hub that's connecting me with other people, and that symbolizes how I want to serve the people around me, and that service is really of high value for me. That's one of the biggest thing that drives me in doing the work that I do. And I even created for quite some time, that has become my profile picture actually. She encourages me to create image of that, which I did. And that for quite some time has been my profile picture in my WhatsApp, because that has been very meaningful for me to know that, oh, So this is really what makes my life feel so meaningful, to be able to serve from my heart, and that service actually can enriches people around me who are connected to this service. And that's so amazing. Like, when you hear me saying that, probably what's so amazing about that, it's like common sense, right? But for me, it's sort of like a revelation. It's sort of like a revelation that I see. So actually, this is one of my core values. This is what makes my life really feel so meaningful. Like having an authentic service that's come from my heart and being able to offer that and benefit the people around me. So that's just to give an example of how that, when she say develop a metaphor, it just started with a ball of light, nothing else. And then it becomes something of an image that has so much more element in it. So Iris, do you have anything that you want to add into my very simplistic way of example of explaining that probably you want to add?
What I would say is, you can hear and read about all this. You have to experience yourself. That's what I would say. Or you have to see a sessions that's being done, and you can see why when people get into training, people get blown away and people just fell in love because this, I don't know, it's so unique. Right? So I wrote a blog. This is like 3 years ago. I wrote a blog on clean. Why do I go into clean? Because I feel that it's very personal, and it's like you talk in riddles, and you manage to open up that riddles. It's like you always have a riddles, but you don't know, it's kind of hidden there somewhere. And then in a clean conversation, you kind of come out. And not only that you found there is one, you can able to open it and unveil what is that hidden gem inside. I think that is the beauty. But to do that, you have to be very honest with yourself. And because a lot of people find it's very difficult to be vulnerable and open.
Yeah. And I can imagine, like I said, if someone who is not used to metaphor, probably they will find it not very easy to find metaphor, because it's not like catching something and like taking it as a metaphor, but like you say, developing a metaphor.
Okay. What you
And that's a different process.
Call a symbol, right? And that's why I say you develop the symbol, and the symbol will go into something else. So in the whole so-called, if you go for the training, you will say, when you got this, what you're going to do. The symbol is the easiest thing. So people normally can come out with symbols. Some people don't have. You can also help them to from that concept, and you can develop into a symbol and then location. Because when you have a location, you know what is it going on. Because it's like, yeah, I think it's there. Yeah, I'm stuck, but I don't know what is the problem. But when you have that symbol, like it's something, and then you can develop, then you can find the location. But the location, you feel more, how to say, grounded. I don't know, I'm not sure it's the correct word, but you can kind of sense for it stronger, which is what they're trying to do in the developing. Which is a normal coaching session, you don't do that. They will ask you how are you feeling and things like that. In clean, they never ask you how do you feel.
Yeah.
You don't have to ask.
Yeah. And I think that's a very, I would say that kind of approach really helped the client. I'm recalling my own experience. Really helped the client to really connect with the self. Because if I'm not connecting with myself, I cannot answer your question. Because your questions is something that I can only answer when I'm connecting with myself. So people probably, I think that's really the journey that we like you say, we need to see, because I know some people are very disconnected with themselves. Like even when they ask like, what do you feel? No, I'm okay, I'm good. Like, I don't feel anything. And I think that's a bit hard.
Yeah, I mean, in our line, we've seen a lot of people. So when the person's very disconnected, it's very difficult. Like we say, the client's like, what? Nature coaching, what is that all about? So they're very, I don't know, it's like kind of very cautious, very worried. So I would say you have to be very gentle and take it slow. And to be honest, a good coach is not about what method you use. It's really in pace with the client. So whatever pace the client is going quick, you want to be quick. The client is going slow, you want to be slow. But of course, they like to say, you agree. It's not that the clean doesn't lead. We do, because when we ask questions, we do have a direction we are leading, right? Depending on what we ask.
Mhm.
So the client says so many things. Then if you choose to ask, if you are shining a light on this, you want them to focus here. That's where you're asking them. So we are leading in that sense. We not say that we are not, do whatever we are. No, no, we're still leading by asking a question so they can have some clarity around what's happening here. And then we gradually ask different part and tie them together. Yeah, but I believe in really going at the client space. If they are not reflective yet, then you have to slowly to teach them, inverted comma, teach as in like give them time to learn to be reflective. Ask them some gentle questions. And then gradually, when you feel them more ready, you can ask more questions.
Yeah, I think, but also, I think it's more about, I'm seeing it from the perspective of nature coaching, right? Because we try that out with teenagers, even like when they are open to the approach and like open to explore themselves, even teenager can really get amazing insight.
You do.
I think, yeah, it's really about being open, I guess, to the process. And I guess an element of open to the process is also trusting the process. Because if I don't trust the process, then I like to say I'll be very anxious, I'll be very cautious. That's a part of my brain that's sort of like on alert mode. that and that will not be very helpful in the session.
Especially for clean. I mean, when I first started, I I find it's very challenging as a client because it's very deep.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I don't speak in that literal words and term, right? But it's actually to be you have to go very deep to kind of to go so deep. You find it's very difficult to explain if you're not going into metaphor. You can't even explain yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Same thing if I give you even why you have a symbol, because it kind of speak to you. Or if I say a word, the rat race, are you a rat or am I a rat? When none of us is a rat, but I want to use think that I'm used to be in a rat race to say that my life used to be running the wheel and spinning and spinning and spinning and non-stop and I'm going crazy. That's what I'm saying. I don't need to say so many words and explain and explain. But when I say a rat race, you all understand. But all these are just very some of the explicit metaphor, there's implicit metaphor, this is explicit, you can tell straight away, right? So there's a lot that we all have. Actually, everyone have, even the very logical ones, we do have only when we can pick it up because it's so embedded in us that people use it all the time. They say about six, is it, in every minute that you say. So we all have it. You'll be surprised at how many you have. Just that we don't notice it because it's so much in our daily life.
Mm. And I think I really resonate with what you just mentioned. Clean language is a very deep process. And when you go very deep, it's very hard to find words that can describe it. And images, I think images has the benefit of describing it better rather than words and logic. And I think that's really like the strength of clean language and other approaches in coaching that uses metaphors, because that imagery can go deeper into the self. But also it has limitation, I guess, which is if someone is not used to go deep, then it's a bit hard to go there. And like you say, we need to pace it. Like probably we just play at the surface first and not go deeper until that person is ready to go deeper. Wow. I am actually quite mindful about our time. I'm really having fun in having this conversation with you. So, Aries, if anyone of the audience would like to know more about your work, where can they find you?
They can either look me out in LinkedIn or they can go to my website. I mean, if they want to, there's an article I wrote about how I kind of why I kind of go into metaphor, into plain language. I kind of first found out about things through NLP when I was studying NLP. And then I seen a lot of clients, and in NLP there are this term metaphor, but NLP the word metaphor is quite different from coaching or language they use metaphor. So in NLP, when you say metaphor, what happens is mind becomes a problem. So what you do is to create a story, literally a story of what they say. And then you kind of give the story to the client. And when you give the story to the client, you kind of find their answer through the story you created for them. You don't say, oh, this person whatever cannot. You just create a story, can be using objects or animals, whatever. You kind of create a whole landscape of story and give it to them, offer it to them. And in particular, there was one incident that really did a very deep impression. This person, I was pro bono at the time, for a couple of sessions. So each session she comes, she just cry and cry. So the first session I saw her was 1.5 hours. She just cried for 1.5 hours.
Wow.
She just cried for 1.5 hours. She can't really tell me what's the problem. So she was kind of referred to for somebody who, I don't think, I've done some coaching with her, but I think she got deeper issues. The NLP will use, and okay, let's try. So okay. So that's how I started using that metaphor. I said, oh God, it's really working. So, and then she started telling me things of the metaphor. I mean, I don't even understand. She's talking about there's a cage, there's a lion, and then the lion whatever. I was like, okay, cage, lion. It doesn't mean anything to me, but I realized something. She can talk about it. Yeah. So I kind of guess I cannot ask, oh, are you talking about the lion? You cannot ask questions like that. So I kind of felt she's talking about there was a lot of trauma that she's going through. She didn't use the word trauma. She talked about all about this lion in a cage and what happened and whatever, right? So I kind of figure out that when you give them like something like a story like that, they can talk about things, especially when people go through very deep trauma. They can't talk about it. But when you put them in that open space, they can talk about things, right? And that's how I was like so blown away. And then I started to find more, and then I found clean language, and I decided, yeah, I need to do more work about it. I read a book on that called Clean Language Itself, a book. Yeah, but I thought that we need to do more. And then the more I do, the more that, oh, there's really more to it.
As always, right?
Yes, as always. Yeah, as always.
Wow.
Yeah. I can put some link on the YouTube. Would that be useful then?
Yes.
My website and my LinkedIn contact, and maybe page that I wrote about why clean means to me, as in it's very special to me because of my own personal journey, why I want to go so deep in a sense. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Aries. I think you just gave us one more golden nugget, which is, like you say, when something is very traumatic, sometimes talking about it is very painful. Like we cannot bring ourselves to talk about it. But when we talk about it in metaphor, it becomes more manageable. We can talk about it with less pain when we talk about our pain in metaphor. I think that's why probably it started out in counseling and therapy and then moved on into this coaching space. Well, thank you so much, Aries. I think this is very beneficial for us. I personally have a lot of more understanding about this clean language approach, and I have fun talking about this to you. And I hope all of you who are in the YouTube channel is also benefiting from this conversation. Again, Aries is going to put some information about her in the comment, and you can find her there. And if you want to know more also about our nature coaching program, you can find into our website as well. Some the people here will also post in the comment the link whereby you can find the information about our nature coaching program. And yeah, reach out to us if you want to know more. We'll be happy to just have a conversation with you. So Aries, do you have any last words before we part it?
Yeah, I think it would be good. Just pop the question into the YouTube and we'll come back and check and we'll answer the questions. And yeah, I haven't seen any question coming through. I hope it just give you some thoughts. Yeah, where do you want to go from here? I think that's where I'll be. Yeah, where do you want to go from here? And would there be any interest if I do a clean taster? That means we explain a little bit more and do some sort of coming together and ask the questions and experience it for yourself. A little bit of that. How would that sound? Yeah.
Yeah. So put your comment in the comment box, and like Aria said, we'll check on that. And if you really have an interest, we'll figure out a way to accommodate your interest and your need. And like I said, I think for those of you who have learned nature coaching, I personally find clean language very beneficial. And I think, like Aria said, it is a principle. It is like different like ICF core competencies. It has been even developed into interviewing. So it's a very versatile and very adaptive approach. So I think those of you who are interested, you can learn more about that. And there must be a way to integrate that into nature coaching if you're really interested about that. So thank you, Guy and Aries. I'm really, really thankful for your time and for sharing your expertise and knowledge and experience with us. And yeah, I wish you all the best in all that you do. Okay, bye everyone. Looking forward to see you in the next live talk.